Okay, let's talk about erythropoiesis. So, erythropoiesis is just a fancy name for the manufacture of red blood cells. So, when you have erythropoiesis, it's a process and it occurs in the red bone marrow of most bones until adolescence, and then only in the short and flat bones. So, during your childhood, you have the formation of red blood cells in all of your bones, but once you're an adult or an adolescent, it's only in the short and flat bones. That's why when we used to do bone marrow biopsies, we used to do them in the iliac bones because they're flat and they're big. So as you age, red marrow in the long bone is replaced by fat marrow. I don't know if you guys remember that from the skeletal system, but remember the middle of the bone, okay, is the shaft of the bone is filled with fat marrow, that yellow fatty marrow. So the red blood cells are produced in the short and flat bones because of that. The long bones fill with that marrow. Okay. So erythropoietin is the hormone that controls the rate of blood cell production. It's produced in the kidneys. So it's your kidneys that secrete erythropoietin. Um, when there's a decrease in red blood cells, there's a decrease in oxygen. And the kidneys understand this, they get that and sense it, and they release erythropoietin to create more red blood cells. Erythrocytes come from uh, hemocytoblasts, which mature into red blood cells. They become so red blood cells. Um, they become smaller and they lose their nucleus and organelles, but they do gain a hemoglobin, which is basically you need iron. It's iron to carry oxygen, and they also develop a concave shape. Okay, so they kind of sink in the middle on both sides. That's what that concave means. So, to aid erythropoiesis, you have to have vitamin B12, folic acid, copper, cobalt, iron, protein, and those are all things that you need. Now, in elderly people, sometimes their small intestine don't work that very well. And vitamin B12 is absorbed in your small intestine. So elderly people can get, it's called pernicious anemia, because they don't absorb the vitamin B12 very well. Red blood cells are enucleated, which means they have no nucleus, and they only live 120 days. So here is a diagram from your book, and it shows the stem cell and how it goes through um, erythropoiesis. You see how it's kind of big, then it gets smaller and smaller. Okay. So there's this red pigment that's contained in the red blood cells. And you have to remember that there's a hemoglobin, which is made of a protein molecule, which is globin, and an iron compound, which is heme, making it hemoglobin. If you don't have enough iron, you're not going to form hemoglobin, okay? And then you're not going to be able to carry a lot of oxygen. Oxyhemoglobin is oxygenated hemoglobin that releases oxygen to the tissue. So once it picks up the oxygen, it is a oxyhemoglobin, and it carries that oxygen to all of the tissues around the rest of the body, released. Now, here's the problem with um, carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide binds better to hemoglobin than oxygen. So oxygen gets pushed off and carbon monoxide binds to it. That is deadly to humans. Okay, what happens is after a while, you don't have any oxygen left in your body. Symptoms can be a headache, dizziness, drowsiness, and unconsciousness. It is odorless and tasteless. So, having a carbon monoxide detector in your home is a very wise thing to do. It's also heavier, and it kind of hangs out down at the floor level to like waist level. it can be released, carbon monoxide can be released from furnace or space heaters. So another thing is generators. So what happens, like exhaust. So you have exhaust from cars, exhaust from generators. A lot of times what people will do is there'll be a really bad storm. They don't want to have to go out in the storm to put gasoline into the generator. So they put it in their garage. And when they put it in their garage, all of the exhausts into the home. And you'll read about carbon monoxide. Whole families have passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning. It is really dangerous. When you're sitting in your car, you should not have it running. If you're still inside your garage, you have to open your garage. You have to make sure that the exhaust can get out of the house because it has carbon monoxide and it can be fatal. Okay. I do want to talk a little bit about normal. So in men, they normally have 4.5 to 6.2 million um, red blood cells per microliter. Now, all of my notes say milliliter because don't have the microliter symbol. And women, it's 4.2 to 5.4 million. This is a picture of a complete blood count. Now, if you look at it, you'll notice that it's a little bit different than what the book tells us, and that's okay. When I worked at the hospital, 16.6 and 47, I saw, hemoglobin and hematocrit that would be, 12 and, 38. I was okay with that. That was fine. A little outside the norm, but not so much that it was dangerous. Um, all of these particular cells and have a function, and we'll be going over them, but you'll see that neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, and bands, those are all white blood cells. Okay. um, we'll go over this a little bit more in the coming lessons, but that's about it for erythropoiesis.